Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today is Sunday, March 7th, and this is Ben Capozzi at Broad Shoulders Farm in beautiful Sutherland, Virginia, Zone 7. I just wanted to share a little thing that I was working on today that y'all may find interesting, and it's about moving an espaliered fruit tree. So I'll flip the camera around and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So right here I had a Mary Reed variety apple tree that I had trained against the welded wire fence here, and I put it in the waterfowl paddock probably 2 years ago when I built this, with the idea that I would have this really productive fence all around the waterfowl, and I'd provide apples and greens and all kinds of stuff for them. And 2 years later now, after working with waterfowl, my thinking on that has changed quite a bit. It's very difficult to establish things in a waterfowl paddock, at least for me, given the resources and time and attention that I've got. So long story short, the tree was just kind of browsed a lot by the geese, I think due to boredom, but also every time we dumped out the water buckets in the kiddie pools, I worked hard to try to steer the water in different directions, but the tree was always getting soaked, and I just think it was never really happy here. So I dug it up and I moved it over to where the bachelor pad is, and I'll show you that in a sec. But just in case you don't know what I'm talking about, an espaliered fruit tree, or espalier, I believe it's a French name, French technique. But basically you're training a tree to grow in a certain way. So in this instance, I'm trying to flatten an otherwise fully three-dimensional tree that wants to grow out like this. I'm trying to squish it like that. So that's basically what I've done. Here's a shell of Alabama and an Einshimmer apple tree, both two very early varieties. The shell of Alabama is doing great. It's always the first apple tree to wake up. But you can see here how I've been pruning it to kind of keep it confined to this plane. And people, you can do this up against a wall. There's all kinds of different shapes. Just, Google or Bing, do a search for the term espalier, and you can see all kinds of fan patterns, candelabra patterns. You can do this with fruit trees, apple trees, pear trees. There's different forms of this for different plants, different fruit tree types, depending on the vigor and whether they form fruiting spurs and all that. You can do it with fig trees. I think it's a little dicier with stone fruit and peaches, but anyhow, it can be done. But this is pretty much what the Mary Reed apple tree looked like that we moved. In fact, I'm going to be moving this shell of Alabama and the Einshimmer. Shell of Alabama is already awake, and look at all these fruiting spurs. I think I might actually get some apples this year, provided the frost doesn't kill it. I think it's going to do all this blooming here in between frost. Now, whether or not there's anything out here that can help pollinate it, I'm not sure. But basically, also what you're doing by training these branches down is you're kind of tricking the tree into believing that it's older than it is, and forcing it to change its hormones from auxin to gibberellin. I think that's the name of the tree hormones, and one of them, I think it's auxin, encourages the tree to go up, up, up to get out of the understory and try to be the tallest thing there. And then once it's up there, then it changes to a different hormone, which I think is gibberellin, which forces it to grow out, because outward is where it's going to feel comfy enough that it can start producing kids and working on developing fruiting spurs. And that's really what we're seeing here. So by training these branches more to the horizontal, it's forced it to produce some fruiting spurs much earlier than typical. I think this shell of Alabama is 3 years old, maybe 4. I have to remember when I grafted it. But also this thing moved around. Here we go. Here's the tag. I brought it up here in the spring of 2019, so it's been here in this spot for 2 years. When I actually grafted it, I'm not sure. But this thing has been moved around several times before finding its spot here. and it's gonna move again, so I've done a lot to set this tree back. The Iron Shimmer looks really pathetic. I don't know if it's gonna make it or not. I'm not too worried. I've never actually gotten apples from it, but again, it's moved a ton of times. But man, the Shell of Alabama just looks robust. But anyhow, let's go over to where I planted the Mary Reed, and we'll talk about that. Hey, real quick, and I'll correct this with some text in the earlier part of the video, but I was thinking about the apple tree. This is not a Mary Reed apple tree that I moved, which is a really cool hyper-local variety. My Mary Reed is actually right up here. We'll pass it here on my left, but this one that I just moved is an Aunt Rachel, which is a really hyper-local apple tree from Chatham, North Carolina. Hey, Ellis. Hi, Wheezies. But just wanted to correct that. It's an Aunt Rachel, not a Mary Reed. So I'll try and speak of it correctly here as we approach it. All right, so I moved it up here. Much drier spot, but still plenty of moisture. Plenty of good stuff grows up here. Let me get the other side of the sun. But I planted it just as deep as it was with a big hole in the waterfowl paddock. I already covered it up with mulch. If you've seen previous videos actually from just this last week, you know that I'm mulching the whole perimeter, pretty much every perimeter everywhere, from the inner and outer perimeter of the garden, winter quarters, and the squash patch, rooster run, and all that. So I'm now starting to fill that out as I move plants around. So you can see here part of the reason why I moved this tree. All this is goose damage. The geese loved nibbling on this, and they just kind of about nibbled it to death. But I mean, look at all that bark that they ate off of there. It's quite a bit. The good news is that there's still a nice thick strip along the back here, so the tree is able to get plenty of nutrients in and out, as long as you've got a little bit of cambium there for nutrients and such to flow. You're doing okay. But the tree needed to move. I should probably do something to screen this from long exposure for the rest of the day, especially more so as we move into the summer, as the sun sets in the west. So it may not want to get this hot. In the previous orientation, this was north, so it got very little light. So I think I'm going to plant something fast growing here, like some comfrey right up here. No tree is an island, no plant is an island, so I've got some yarrow to put around here, some comfrey. I've even got some stinging nettles in a pot that I overwintered. I'm probably going to add them up here as well and just start, creating a nice little guild around this apple tree. Thank you, Rye. Thank you, Lincoln. But, so you can see here, the geese, this low branch, they just gnawed this thing to heck. But again, there's a nice little strip of cambium back here, and I did cut this branch back until I got to green. So there was more out here, but I got to green, so it's alive and it's doing well. So I also pruned back. There's a large branch up here that was coming up here. Like, that's not really part of the plan, because generally, at least in this form of espalier, I want like a central trunk and all these horizontals, or I don't know what you call them, laterals. Maybe you call them cordons, like when you're talking about working with grapes. But this one was going kind of off that way, so I gently bent it back. And I'm just holding these things in place right now with loose, important that you remember, loose zip ties. When I was freeing this one from the previous fence, I found a spot where I had zip tied it, and I zip tied it really tightly for some bizarre reason. There's normally no need to do anything like that. I'm glad that I didn't cut off circulation though, but this whole branch is good, and I'm hoping that I may actually get some fruit off of this one this year. Some fruiting spurs forming, so we'll see. But this one, like I said, is Aunt Rachel. It's an early apple. It's a local apple from Chatham County, North Carolina. I think it produces apples into July into early August, so fairly early. Not my earliest, but an early one. But anyhow, so we got a cordon going there. I left this alive. I trimmed it back until I got to green. This is a pretty, I don't know if this branch is going to make it, but I did get to green, and there is a bud here that is healthy, or a branch. The cambium's all intact here, and along here there is a strip. So I'm gonna let this go and see what it produces. See what it produces this year. But if it comes off here, I can train it down. You know, you want, I don't know, a foot to 18 inches or so between your horizontals, your cordons, and so we'll see. And this one, so like this branch right here was all up like that. So by bending it down here, so Rye, please. So it was dominated by the hormone auxin. It was going up, 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 trying to get into the, you know, be the tallest tree in the forest, and then it would start branching out to make kids. So, and you can see, you know, the structure of the buds and everything. Everybody's aimed like they were going up. So now that I've brought it down like this, it's going to make the tree think that it's older than it is, and it's going to start, the hormone gibberellin is going to start being produced. I think that's the way it is. It's either, I may have them reversed, but anyhow, it's one of those two, auxin or gibberellin. And these will start turning into fruiting spurs instead of turning into branches. So, you know, as we start watching these over the course of the year ahead, it'll be interesting to see, because what they should do is start doing what this one has done and form these little spurs so we can actually start getting some apples. Probably trim that one. And, you know, I may need to do some thinning as I go through here. It's been about 3 years since I worked, excuse me, on any of my apple trees, so I'm a little out of practice. My memory's still a little hazy on this stuff, but I think I'm on the right path. So my guess is, where I had to cut this part out here when it was over in the previous location in order to get away from the fence, it was like thread up through there, and I wouldn't be able to move the tree and take that branch with me, so I cut that branch off. My guess is either here or here, I'm going to get a sprout this year that will want to be the new central leader, the dominant central axis for the tree, because this one was it, right? It was going up, but I bent it over. And then this one was a rival that maybe second, you know, option for that. Nope, I bent it over. So this apple tree now wants to produce another one. I mean, it may produce from somebody up here. It may do one of these down here. Who knows? See more goose damage. But now it's over here. It shouldn't be gnawed on by the geese, because they have a million things to gnaw on instead of gnawing on, you know, one of the few trees with delicious green sweet apple bark in their paddock. So that's what's going on here. Next up, I've got some Jerusalem artichokes I'm going to be planting in here. Excuse me, I've got a Isai hardy kiwi I'm going to add. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that, I think. I'll talk about more in a different video. I don't want to ramble. But anyhow, just remember, no trees an island. Now's the time, once you plant the tree, to start planting up support things. You need some mulch plants like rhubarb or cardoons or artichokes. Comfrey is a great one. You need some insectary plants. You can do dill, you can do yarrow, you can do borage. Try to go for perennials. Maybe you want a rhizome barrier, depending on what you're into. You can look at that. You want a nitrogen fixer, so maybe throw in some clover. I'm going to do stinging nettles over here, because that's what I've got on hand today. But it's actually really kind of fun to do these things. And as you're supporting the tree, you know, I like to think that I'm also just supporting the general overall health of the farm and the health of my animals, because, you know, everything that I'm planting is something that has a benefit for them or me and those that I know and love. So, yeah, happy planting. All right, I hope that you are healthy wherever you are. Please continue to stay that way and have a fantastic day. You can follow the farm at Broad Shoulders Farm on Instagram and Facebook. All right, take care. Bye-bye.